Hey, welcome to Anime What Ifs. This is part 9 of What If Naruto Married Temari. Naruto woke to both a migraine and the dripping of the pipes in his mindscape. Struggling to his feet, he rubbed his fingers on his temples to ease the pain. He noticed Kyuubi smirking at him from his cage, or at least he thought it was a smirk. There were an awful lot of teeth involved. "Hey Fox," he called out to his prisoner. "We won, right?" Kyuubi sneered. "If by win you mean, draw too much of my power, collapse like the pathetic meatbag you are and then be saved by that fool Shikaka torments, then yes, you won. Well, aren't you just as friendly and cheerful as ever?" Naruto remarked dryly, not really feeling like getting into a shouting match with the fox. "So what happened?" Kyuubi regarded his unwanted host critically. Apparently, the annoying little ninjen was going to be polite today. Deciding that it cost him nothing and could potentially gain him advantages in the future, Kyuubi decided to be nice. "As I told you, flesh sack, you drew too much of my power and you collapsed. Your pathetic little body cannot handle my power at such a degree." This being polite thing isn't that bad, Kyuubi told himself, ignoring Naruto's eye twitch and clenched fists. "So, after your stupidity caused you to almost get me killed, you fainted like a little girl and here you are." Ignoring the almost overwhelming urge, see how well the Kyuubi liked getting hit in the face with a Rasengan, Naruto ground out through gritted teeth. "Fine, be that way, so why am I here?" The massive fox shrugged. "There could be many reasons." "Oi, if you don't know, just say so," Naruto yelled back. Kyuubi ignored him and tucked his tails under his muzzle and pretended to sleep, snores and all. Naruto frowned and bit back a curse as he mentally visualized running Kyuubi through a meat grinder. Not very practical, but oh so very satisfying. Feeling a mental tug, Naruto realized he was waking up. With one last glare at Kyuubi, Naruto vanished from his mindscape. Returning to the waking world, Naruto groaned when the first thing he saw was white. "Fantastic, back in the hospital again," he mentally sighed. The second thing he noticed was a hand gently running through his hair. Without moving his head, Naruto looked over to see Temari sitting in the chair next to his bed, absently stroking her hand through his hair as she stared off into the distance. "Temari-chan?" Temari whipped her hand back and blushed. She hadn't noticed him waking up and was very embarrassed by her show of affection. Of course, then she realized that this was her husband and they were alone. That was when she mentally berated herself for acting like a girl with a crush. "Wait, is it even possible to have a crush on your own husband?" she thought. Naruto was cautiously watching the emotions play across his wife's face with increasing concern. He wasn't sure exactly what was wrong with her, but he prayed she didn't end up blaming him for whatever it was. He really liked Temari, but her temper scared the crap out of him sometimes. Both teens were broken out of their thoughts when Tsunade entered the room. Naruto waved half-heartedly. "Hey Abba-chan, how long have I been here?" Tsunade glared at the boy before sighing and pinching the bridge of her nose. "Naruto, if I had any idea of how much trouble you would cause me, you and Jiraiya would never have gotten me to return." Seeing the blank look on his face, she decided to explain. "It's been 2 days since the 3-demon battle, as everyone has taken to calling that little fight of yours." Naruto growled hearing that name. It was somewhat apt, he admitted, considering who was involved, but the word demon held really unpleasant memories. That reminded him, "Naba-chan, what happened to Gaara?" "Gaara is fine," Tsunade replied. "He spent a night resting here in the hospital, then rejoined the Sunagakure delegation. He also said to tell you that the fight made him feel alive, whatever that means." She didn't fail to notice the way Temari and Naruto both flinched at the statement. Cocking her head, she asked, "Something I should know?" Temari and Naruto exchanged guarded glances. "No, not really, Bachan," Naruto replied cheerfully. Eyeing the two suspiciously, Tsunade disregarded it. "Whatever. You were very lucky he was here. The amount of Biju chakra the three of you pumped out would have probably killed a normal shinobi." "Ah," Naruto replied, "I was wondering why only Gaara and Temari-chan showed up." Reaching over, he grabbed Temari's hand. Thanks for saving my butt, Temari-chan. Temari blushed a bit. Between Gaara and her status, she wasn't used to such kindness. Hiding her embarrassment by lightly smacking Naruto's hand, she smiled at her husband. Of course. I wasn't going to let the two of you have all the fun. Despite direct orders to the contrary, Tsunade said with a mild glare at the girl. Temari straightened in her chair defensively. My brother and my husband were fighting, she said, glowering at Tsunade. I don't care what the orders were, I simply could not let them fight someone that dangerous on their own. My. Tsunade said mildly. And here I thought Tsunagakure Shinobi followed orders to the letter no matter what. Temari flushed as the barb hit home but raised her chin frostily. That may be, Hokage-sama, she replied icily, but I happen to be a Konoha kunoichi now and I believe I've heard my husband say that those that abandon their comrades are trash. So, the girl is not only dutiful but strong-willed as well. Good, that will serve her well married to Knucklehead there, Tsunade thought as she stared at the girl. I suppose that's true. Tsunade conceded. Changing the subject, she addressed Naruto, who was following the conversation with very wide eyes. So Gaki, you want to tell me why you didn't just use Hiraishin to escape when Han confronted you? I didn't think of it? Naruto said after mentally slapping himself. Naruto. Tsunade said testily as Temari palmed her face. You have a jutsu that lets you go pretty much wherever you have a seal and you didn't think to use it in a fight with a Jinchuriki? No. Naruto replied shakily. By the time I knew he was a Jinchuriki, I was already kinda locked into the fight. Admirably resisting her urge to pound him till he stopped moving, Tsunade sighed. Naruto, there are times when it is wisest to simply retreat and deal with something or someone at a later date. Holding her hand up to forestall the comment he was about to make, Tsunade continued. Yes, I realize he attacked you, but if you had thought it through, you could have retreated, informed me and there wouldn't have been a massive Biju-fueled clash right next to the village. Naruto lowered his gaze. I'm sorry, Bachan. I just got caught up in the fight and when it got bad I couldn't think of anything but the fight. Tsunade could sympathize at least a little with him. She remembered her team's fight against Hanzo the Salamander and how fighting someone that dangerous caused tunnel vision. Still, she simply had to get Naruto to stop charging into things without thinking. She firmly believed that the boy in front of her would become Hokage and charging off half-cocked was a very bad thing for a Hokage to do. Naruto, you are very strong, especially for your age and rank, but that doesn't mean anything if you don't think. Hi Bachan, I promise I'll do better. A despondent Naruto replied. Good, see that you do. Tsunade said as she reached forward to ruffle his hair. I'm just worried about you, Gaki. You know what sort of danger is out there for you and you've just added a significant weakness. She eyed Temari's stomach. Eyes wide, Naruto followed her gaze and blanched. Oh shit, he thought in a panic. That's right, those Akatsuki freaks are after me and now I have Temari and a baby on the way. Narrowing his eyes in determination, Naruto clenched his fists. Bachan, I have to get stronger. He said quietly, with steel in his tone. There is no way I can let those freaks get to my family. Tsunade nodded, I've taken care of part of that, but it's going to be up to you to do the rest. Can you handle it? Naruto met her gaze steadily, there's really no choice Bachan, I simply have to. Temari glanced between the two in confusion, obviously there was something she was missing, something important. Naruto, what are you two talking about? She asked in a stern tone. Naruto panicked. How do you tell the woman you married that because of said marriage multiple S-rank shinobi would be hunting them? He gazed at Tsunade imploringly but she simply shook her head, it was his issue to deal with. Gee, thanks a ton Bachan, scratching the back of his head nervously, Naruto chuckled. Well you see Temari-chan, there are these really strong guys hunting me cause of furball here. He said, patting his stomach. Temari felt her eyes narrow, this seems like something I should know, being married to you and with who my brother is. Naruto flinched at the ice in her tone. Gomen Temari-chan, I just didn't want to worry you. Naruto, she said, glaring at her cringing husband. When we married, your problems became our problems. Taking a deep calming breath, Temari realized that this wasn't a good conversation to have in a public place like the hospital. She was now the matriarch of a Konoha clan, and with a dim bulb husband she had to make sure private matters stayed that way. Now isn't the time for this, but believe me, this conversation isn't over, husband. Temari pursed her lips thoughtfully. If they hunt you for your tenet, did you think to warn my brother? Naruto flashed her a foxy grin. Yeah, I did that when they brought you here to Konoha. Temari nodded. I see, and what exactly did you tell him? Everything I just told you, Temari-chan, and that if he sees someone in a black cloak with red clouds he should kill first, kill again for good measure, and not bother asking questions later. Temari's face tightened in displeasure. After we finish our conversation, I believe I should speak with my brother as well. At the newly re-established Tsunade embassy, Gaara felt a shiver travel down his spine. I wonder what that was, he thought as he ignored the diplomat droning on in front of him. After being released from the hospital by Tsunade, Naruto and Temari headed home. The trip was very uncomfortable for Naruto as Temari spent most of the journey boring a hole through his head with her eyes. He'd offered her his arm as had become his custom lately and was saddened when she chose not to take it. I guess she's really mad. Upon entering the house, Temari turned on her husband in rage. Do you think I'm weak? No, you're really strong, Temari-chan, Naruto replied defensively. Really, if you think I'm strong, why hide the fact that you have powerful enemies that might attack you at any time? The girl seethed. That's not it, Temari-chan. I didn't think of it that way. Dropping her chin slightly, Temari flashed him the smile she usually used in battle. No, husband, she practically spat the last word. That's just it, you didn't think, did you? I am not some pretty little flower cooped up where you can admire me. I am a kunoichi, a Tsunade wind mistress and a master of Tessenjutsu. I earned those titles the hard way. Naruto cut her off in the middle of her rant. No, that's not what happened, Data Boyo. I swear to you, I was going to tell you, but so much stuff has happened that I didn't really find the right time. Yes, I think you're beautiful and strong and awesome, and the thought of you being hurt because of me tears me up. He looked at her with tears in his eyes. With you here I'm happy, please don't hate me because I forgot to tell you something important. He finished in a whisper, eyes cast to the ground. His words tossed a bucket of ice water on the flames of her temper. Shit, I forgot that he is socially stunted, which was pretty stupid of me. Naruto, look at me, she commanded. Not for the first time, Temari noted that to truly see what Naruto felt, one needed to see his eyes. The depth of the pain and self-loathing in his eyes was painful, and she felt the rest of her anger fade away. Closing the distance between them, she lowered her face so that they were at eye level with each other. Naruto, she said softly. I was angry that you kept such an important thing from me, but I do not hate you, and I will not leave you. His eyes reflected a deep relief, and Temari leaned in and gave him a small peck on the lips. As I told you our wedding night, for better or worse I will always be with you. Naruto cast his eyes to the ground. I'm really sorry, Temari-chan. I just want you to be safe. Temari rolled her eyes in exasperation. Naruto, like I just said, I'm not some pretty little flower. I don't need protection. Naruto jerked his head up at her statement, heavily frowning. Reaching forward, he placed his hands on her shoulders and pulled her eye to eye. Yes, you do. He stated flatly, overriding her protest. One of the men chasing me single-handedly wiped out the entire Uchiha clan in a span of hours. That sort of power is not something to just shrug off. I knew that you were strong, in some ways even stronger than me, but the group after me hunt creatures like what we fought a few days ago. Temari paled as the information soaked in. Sure, she was strong, damn near Jonin level, but that wasn't just another league, that was another damn dimension. She didn't intend to just roll over and let them take her brother and husband, but perhaps Naruto had a point. Seeing that Temari was beginning to accept his statement, Naruto let her go, fist clenched at his side. Temari-chan, he said quietly, are you aware of where I draw my strength? Temari raised an eyebrow, confused at the apparent sudden change of subject. Not really, no. I know it has something to do with precious people. You yelled something about that when you stabbed yourself that time Ino was trapped in your head. Once again Naruto met Temari's eyes as if trying to drive his message straight through her eyes and into her brain. I believe that one can only be truly strong when one has something precious to protect. My greatest desire now is to protect you, Temari-chan, so please, let me protect you. Temari felt as if she was drowning in his eyes. She could see his honesty shining through everything and knew that he absolutely meant every word he had just said. The knowledge that the boy in front of her would quite literally die for her threw Temari for a loop. She'd grown up knowing that someday, sooner rather than later, her youngest brother would kill her. Now the same boy who had changed the future, had literally changed the course of her life, was showing her that he was willing to do anything to protect her. Something like this always seemed to happen just when she thought she had him all figured out. Reaching out, Temari pulled him into a fierce hug. I'm not promising that I won't fight, she whispered into his ear. But I guess I can let you protect me. Just remember, I will protect you too. Naruto nodded and whispered back, I never expected anything less, Temari-chan. The two teens stood there embracing each other for several minutes, savoring the quiet time spent together. Sadly, this moment of bonding was interrupted by Ino bounding through the door. Hey Naruto, Tsunade-sama sent me to get you. She shouted, before she saw her fellow blondes standing near the door. Closing his eyes, Naruto sighed. Temari-chan, he whispered, would you think less of me if I told you that right now I'm thinking of locations to hide her body? Temari chuckled. No, you just let me know if you need help with that, she whispered back. Out loud she said, what do you want, flower girl? We're busy. Ino giggled at the two, they actually seemed to make a good couple even if the very idea seemed absurd to the gossip queen. Like I said, Tsunade-sama sent me to get you. A council meeting has been called regarding that fight you had a few days ago. Naruto groaned and let go of Temari. Figures. He pouted. I just woke up and now I have to go play nice with the council. A quick glance at Temari in her ninja gear reminded him of something he'd almost forgotten. Temari-chan, go get dressed in formal wear. You're coming with. Temari cocked her head to the side, hand on her hip as she studied her husband, curious about his motives. A brief image from her wedding flashed into her head and she smiled when she realized that he wasn't commanding her to come, he was treating her as his equal in clan matters. Nodding her acceptance, she darted up the stairs to get ready. Naruto turned to Ino as he began to follow Temari upstairs. Ino-chan, we'll be a few minutes, make yourself at home or head back if you want. Ino shook her head. Tsunade-sama said to bring you, so I'm staying. She called up the stairs. Several minutes later found Naruto waiting for Temari next to Ino. He was wearing the same kimono from his wedding, what he had taken to calling his clan head clothes. A big difference from the wedding was that rather than the ring boxes, the storage seal on his sleeve held his kodachi and several Hiraishin kunai. Being caught off guard with only a single kunai by Han had caused him to develop a slight paranoid streak. Meh, it's only paranoia as someone is not out to get you, and I know for a fact I have enemies. Catching sight of Temari coming down the stairs, he felt his jaw drop open at her appearance. She was wearing a short-sleeved black kimono with burnt orange trim and a matching obi. As she moved, Naruto noticed that the sides of the kimono were slit to above her knees to allow her more freedom of movement. She smiled at his reaction and did a small twirl to show him the white Uzumaki swirl emblazoned on her back. Ino stared back and forth between the two. Temari looked simply elegant but still fierce, and even Naruto looked refined. She was amazed at how much they matched, and she expected they would draw a lot of attention on the way to the council chamber. Naruto held his hand up. Okay, two things before we go, Temari-chan. You have a weapon or preferably weapons? In response, Temari pulled two small folding fans from under her obi. Seeing Naruto eye the fans unimpressed, Temari snapped one open and with a quick wave sliced the top off a candle on the far side of the room. Smirking, she put the fans away as Naruto eyed them with a great deal more respect. I told you earlier, I am a master of Tessenjutsu, Naruto. I can use pretty much any sort of fan as a weapon. Naruto nodded his acceptance. Last thing, Ino, why the hell does Bachan keep sending you to get us anyway? Ino's eyes widened. Oh, that's right, you didn't hear, did you? Tsunade-sama accepted me as a second apprentice when I asked her after, well, you know, our fight. Anyways, she told me that one of the first duties of an apprentice is to shut up and do as I'm told, so I end up relaying a lot of messages. .... Ino clasped her hands over her mouth before she could finish her sentence. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Ino-chan, I thought you had recovered from that whole merger thing? Ino sighed and knocked her head against the wall in defeat. Yeah, I mostly did, but my dad says that some of it is permanent. So if I get excited, I tend to say "Dada boyo," just like you. Naruto smirked. Well, it could be worse, you know. Ino glared at him as Temari chuckled in the background. Yeah, easy enough for you to say. Sure, Naruto responded. You could have been infected with the flames of youth, or possibly find everything to be troublesome. Ino shuddered as she pictured either scenario in her head. Temari for her part stopped chuckling and began straight up laughing at Ino. Flushing, Ino started to retort before she realized that she was outnumbered, a guest in their home and on a tight time frame. Oh, we gotta go, she yelled as she darted out the door. Naruto smirked after her, then bowed to his wife and offered her his arm. Temari smiled a bit as she linked arms with him and clasped his hand. The two shared a brief kiss before they fixed their game faces on for the trip across town. Ino randomly chatted about a very wide variety of things as the trio crossed the village to the Hokage Tower. She was confused that she was only receiving short polite responses from Naruto and Temari until her training as Yamanaka heir kicked in and she realized that she was dealing with the public faces of Clan Namikaze. Ino then dropped her normal attitude and drew on her father's training as heir of Clan Yamanaka. The rest of the trip passed in a companionable silence. Entering the council chamber, Naruto briefly paused when he saw the Uchihas. Sasuke was glaring at him, not a terrible shock, but still upsetting. What was far more surprising was Sakura, sitting behind her husband. She seemed to be hiding in her own kimono. She looked terrible, dark rings under her eyes and the makeup she wore couldn't conceal her clear exhaustion. What the hell happened to her? Naruto murmured to Temari. Following her husband's gaze, Temari admitted to herself that the pinkette looked pretty bad. Hell, Temari actually felt herself feeling sorry for the one she still considered a worthless fangirl wannabe Kunoichi. As they moved to take their seats at the table, Temari whispered back. I don't know, but she looks like she fell asleep in a scorpion's nest. Raising an eyebrow at the seemingly odd comment, Naruto couldn't stop a frown when he reached his assigned place at the council table. The table itself formed a horseshoe facing the high-backed chair the Hokage occupied. To the right of the Hokage's position was a small table where three weathered-looking shinobi sat, two men and a woman. One of the men and the woman seemed fairly normal, only the man's glasses really made him stand out. The third member, the other man, drew Naruto's interest as he unabashedly studied Naruto. The man looked like he had been through some sort of hell, wrapped up in bandages that covered one of his eyes, one of his arms held in a sling. Ignoring the man's gaze for now, Naruto considered his position at the table carefully. As a junior member of the council in rank and service time, Naruto sat at the very end of the U-shaped table, directly across from the Uchiha position on the other side. It had a small advantage that he was close to Tsunade's place, but the disadvantage was that he could feel Sasuke's gaze boring into him, and given their positions at the table, he could do it for the entire meeting without bothering to turn his head. The second problem he had was that there was only one chair right at the table. A seat was provided for the heir, in this case Temari, but it was seated behind and to the right. This won't do at all, Naruto thought. I promised that she would be my equal. Most of the council and his friends watched amused as Naruto moved the heir's chair up next to his and pulled it back for Temari to sit. Temari felt the urge to blush as she gracefully took her seat. It was a thoughtful gesture on Naruto's part, but she silently wished that he hadn't drawn so much attention to her. Surreptitiously scanning the crowd as Naruto took his seat, Temari noticed that most of the assembled clan heads and heirs seemed more amused than anything else at her husband's actions. She reminded herself once again that Konoha was a very strange place. The underlying chatter and whispers died off when Tsunade entered wearing her formal Hokage robes and took her seat. Taking off her hat, she lay on the desk facing the council, signifying that this meeting was being brought to order. "As you are all aware by now," she said, completely businesslike. 2 days ago, there was an attempt made on the life of the head of Clan Namikaze. She paused as everyone turned to look at Naruto. As you can see, Naruto is fine, but the implications are very worrying. We have been expecting a hostile response from Iwagakure ever since Naruto's heritage became public knowledge, but an attack by a Jinchuriki was not something we planned for. Tsunade pulled out a dented and twisted hitayate showing the scratched-out Iwagakure insignia on it. Records from the Third Shinobi War would indicate that the Jinchuriki was a shinobi named Han and that he carried the gobi. We don't know much about him, but it seems highly unlikely that he would become a Nuke after a lifetime of service to Iwagakure. We can't prove that he was ordered to kill Naruto, and as a Nuke we have no legal reason to lay the blame on Iwagakure. A soft murmur of discontent sounded through the chamber as Tsunade finished speaking. The scratched-out hitayate was a polite legal fiction and a paper-thin cover, but one that was recognized by all 5 villages. Unless they wanted to deny themselves the chance to use such a tactic in the future, they would have no choice but to swallow it. Naruto moved to speak. He was very angry at the thought that he was forced to kill someone like himself, and the thought that the one responsible would get to walk away clean was infuriating. He stopped when Temari kicked his shin under the table. Turning a questioning glance at her, he read her glare as "not here, not now." Grumpily, he sulked back in his chair in compliance. He knew she had a point. If he wanted to be Hokage, he needed to start showing that he could control himself in situations like this, but he really didn't like it. Temari mentally gave thanks as she watched Naruto sink back into his chair. She knew him well enough to know what he was thinking, and a loud outburst at only his second council meeting would cause severe problems for them in the future. Since her husband seemed to live more or less totally in the present, someone had to have the long view. Tsunade raised her hand and the room quieted. "For now, we will consider this as a possible first strike, and as such I will be ordering a heightened state of alert after this meeting. Under Operation Plan Delta, we will begin pulling teams out of foreign missions and concentrating our forces. The shinobi in the reserves will begin weekly training until such time as we are certain the crisis has passed. Let me be clear on this, I do not want a war." Even before the Konoha crash, Iwagakure had an edge in numbers, and were able to ally themselves with other hostile countries to bolster their strength. "We need time to recover." As the assembled shinobi digested that, Ino blurted before her father could stop her. "But Hokage-sama, Naruto knows the jutsu his father used to crush Iwagakure in the last war. Can't he do that this time?" Feeling the eyes of the room on him, Naruto spoke quietly. "While I have learned to use Hiraishin, I do not yet have my father's skill with it. I could undoubtedly cause painful casualties to any attacker if I used it, but I wouldn't be able to simply crush them like my father did." Danzo spoke from his place at the elders' table. "Is it possible for you to teach others to use the jutsu?" If it was possible, he needed to have at least one of his agents trained, and then his tools would be far more effective. Naruto considered his response carefully. "I'm afraid that I cannot for 2 reasons. First, it's a clan jutsu, much like the Yamanaka mind techniques or the Nara's shadow manipulation. Second, at present it only works for me as my father's son. I finally managed to crack the 3 barrier seals on the main seal array, and frankly some of it still doesn't make much sense to me. One thing I did recognize was the seal confirming the identity of the jutsu user. I thought that if I took that out, I could possibly modify the seal to allow Temari-chan at least to use it. It's a good thing I used a bunchin to test it. There is a reason I now have a new pond deep enough to dive in near the back of my estate. Several of those present winced at the thought of how powerful the explosion had to have been. Danzo for his part simply grunted. It would have been nice, but he had tried to crack the seals for years with no luck. He was frankly surprised that the Kyubi brat had managed to get farther than his own efforts, but perhaps in time. Tsunade once again called the room to order. She'd informed the council of the attack and the response, and now all she wanted to do was go get some sake and maybe try to catch up some on her paperwork. Very well, does anyone have any further business to discuss here today? She asked, voice implying that she truly hoped no one did. Her hopes were not to be as Sasuke stood stiffly. Hokage-sama, Clan Uchiha has a petition for the council's approval. Tsunade cursed in her mind. Of course he did. Motioning for him to proceed, Tsunade wondered exactly what the boy was up to. Honorable councilors, Sasuke addressed the council. I come to you today on a matter of grave importance. Over the years, the Sharingan has been a source of strength for the village, and I am the last loyal member of my clan. I feel that we must revive the strength of my clan for the safety of the village in the future. As such, I propose that we pass a law today I have come to call the Clan Restoration Act. Under this law, if a blood limit clan is reduced to a single male heir, that heir may marry multiple wives to ensure the continuation of the bloodline. I do not do this solely for myself, of course. This law would apply to all blood limit clans and will ensure the village's strength in years to come. I second this motion. Danzo said from his place at the elders' table. I believe that we should do whatever it takes to strengthen the village. Mentally, Danzo rubbed his hands in glee as he considered ways that he could use this law to strengthen his own forces. The motion has been seconded, we will now debate the merits. Tsunade said formally, hiding her distaste for the subject. She strongly suspected this was motivated by the fact that Naruto and Temari had already conceived an heir but couldn't actually say that without proof. The order will be reverse seniority, which I consider fitting, as this law would also affect Clan Namikaze as well. Tsunade put her own gambit in play. She didn't see Naruto supporting this, and she was willing to bet that he could shut it down. Even with her legendary bad luck with gambling, she knew to never bet against the brat. Naruto glanced at Temari with a small smile as he stood and took a deep calming breath. He now had an idea of exactly why Sakura had looked so terrible earlier, and he resisted the urge to punch Sasuke in the face. It seemed that Temari nagging him into studying the Konoha Charter and relevant clan laws was about to be useful despite his denial of the idea. Not that he was going to admit it anytime soon, but he suspected she was going to be just a bit smug about it later. Clan Namikaze would deny this motion. He began ignoring the rage that flashed across Sasuke's face. We feel that this law would violate the Konoha Charter regulating clan practices. The charter states that any powers not specifically granted to the village by the charter itself are solely the discretion of the clans themselves. This law would be a wedge allowing future laws that further restrict clan rights, and I simply will not stand for it. Finishing his speech, Naruto sat down as most everyone stared at him in wonderment. Not bad for the dobe, he thought with a huge mental smirk. He was startled when Temari slid her hand into his and squeezed gently. That was very well done, Naruto. She whispered in his ear. Naruto whispered back, well, I had to come up with something other than my wife would kill me, didn't I? He bit back a small yelp when Temari playfully kicked his ankle. After Naruto's speech, the other clan heads all voted to deny the motion as well. Some may have been motivated by a dislike for the law or past grudges against the Uchiha clan, but most agreed that any law chipping away at clan traditions was a bad thing. The only members that did vote approval were the three elders, and Tsunade turned to the seething Sasuke. My apologies, Uchiha-san, but the motion has been denied. Sasuke grunted a response, and Tsunade quickly dismissed the council to attend to business. As Naruto filed out, arms linked with Temari, he caught Sakura giving him a thankful glance. This did not escape Temari's attention, but she simply ignored it for the time being. Her husband had done well and hadn't embarrassed her, so she wasn't going to let something like that ruin her mood. Arriving home, both teens agreed that they were tired and it was time to go to bed. Stopping Naruto outside the bedroom door, Temari darted inside as a confused Naruto waited. His confusion increased when she opened the door and handed him a pillow and a blanket. Temari-chan, what's this?" he asked. Temari smirked at him as she laughed. "Naruto, when a husband screws up like you did earlier today, he sleeps on the couch until his wife says otherwise." Naruto stared at her, stunned. "What?" Temari laughed harder at his expression. "Sorry Naruto-kun, but that's the rule," she said, closing the door in his face. Naruto stared at the door for several minutes, until he shook himself out of his stupor. He briefly thought about using one of the guest rooms, but decided that he didn't want Temari angry at him. Sighing, he headed downstairs and made up the couch. As he laid down, he blurted, "Well, this sucks. Hope you liked this episode. The next one is coming soon."